嗨，各位早安，各位早安，在星期六的早上，对我来说，今天是我期待很久的一个聚会啊。那也其中我知道有很多位是上线来的，都是我们的一些老朋友。那在学习的过程当中，从我们的一般的YouTube 啊，或者是有多年跟着我一起学习、一起成长的朋友们，然后甚至于今天我们知道有很多的可能是 Marcus 的粉丝啊，或者是 Rahasya 的粉丝，或者是对于这个话题感兴趣，理性与灵性这个话题感兴趣的朋友们上来。首先，要谢谢大家，然后也期待这个12月了，到这个12月的时候，我们一般的习惯就是到了12月份，我们就会做一个整理，对自己的这一年啊，甚至于这一生做一些整理，然后希望在新的2023年能够有一些新的可能性啊。那在这里首先要祝福大家，也希望大家今年年底能够一切都能够顺利，把该做的事情都做好。今天在这个时间，经过了2-3年的 pandemic 之后，我想我们很多的生活习惯都改变了，这个不用我再多说。从以往很多外放的自己，慢慢就是往内看。那因此我的2本书，我想跟你好好说话，转念的力量，也就在这个时机里面，受到大家的关注。那就开始觉得说 ，OK， 我哪里都不去，我回过头来，我看看自己。那也真的静下心来看自己的时候，又发现说，哇，原来我的很多的思维的确是影响的我的语言的表达，然后我的语言的表达就影响了我跟外人，甚至于家人的关系。那这些话题是大概我很幸运，我在20几岁的时候，这个话题20几岁的时候，我就开始很深切的体会到，我必须要整理我自己。如果我没有把自己整理好的话，那未来的日子，不管我学习再多，我都有可能用我所知道的知识去达到我自己的目的。那如果我达到自己的目的，只是为了要符合自己个人的一些利益的话，我相信有一天我会后悔啊。那所以我觉得自私这件事情，为自己着想这些事情，我觉得不用再学了，因为为了求生存，很多时候我们的确必须要为自己的求生的能力，然后必须要去学习一些方法，然后让自己能够在我们的环境当中存活下来。我想这个我们大家都会。然而如果只是这样，如果我只是关心我自己，那这个人生就太无趣了。所以慢慢的我们就知道，从自己的舒适圈，或者是只为自己着想这件事情，我们一定得要往外跨。然后往外跨的时候又碰到很多的困难，因为在内心深处有2个声音非常大的撞击，就是为什么我啊？为什么不能够按照我的意思啊？那然后再来就是 OK， 那为什么我只能按照你的意思？那这中间就是我觉得我们这一路的学习，就是把这2者能够融合起来，如何我能够学会我不委屈自己，同时又可以成全别人。哇，那讲起来其实这样子的路一走下来就可能真的是需要很多的学习。那今天我为各位邀请到的这2位讲者，一位是我多年的好友，大概30年的好友 Rahasya， 良师益友，在他身上我有很多的学习，灵性成长上我很谢谢这一辈子有这样的机缘，能够碰到一个一心求道啊，这是我的说法，他的说法可能不一样啊，就是一心求道，然后又希望自己能够把自己人生最美好的那个品质呈现出来啊。那在这条路上，我就真的是在他旁边就看着他如何在亲密关系上，如何跟人的相处上，我是眼睁睁的看着他在很多的时候做选择。 那因为走在灵性成长的道路上，我们每一个人的方法都不一样。然而对我来说非常重要的就是你要有一个你看得到的真的人，而不是只是书上写的。所以当我看到有一个这样的人是这样的活着的时候，那种感染力就我自己的成长跟学习相对的就快速了很多。这位是 Rahasya， 那另外一位 Marcus 是我大概近10年的朋友，是那时候我在魅力杂志，然后他其实也是我先生的朋友，是透过我先生介绍的。那是因为我先生的同学啊，那他们这个所谓的科技人啊，就是因为他们是成大的同学，成大电机系，所以是一个非常理性的头脑。然后他进入了 Arthur 啊的优善的创办人，然后他就进入了灵性的探索，然后如何用科技的方法来帮助我们在灵性成长上能够有大的一个改变啊。所以这是另外一个世界。虽然我在灵性成长这条道路上走了这么多年，30多年，但是用科技，这也是我一直在学的，包括我现在我们在阳明交大，那我们也知道阳明也是个医学院啊，那我们很渴望能够用医学的证明来证实我们在做的这些灵性成长真的是对我们的身心灵是有帮助的。那最明显的就是我们的健康。所以今天很开心能够邀请2位，待会我会再对 Marcus 再多做介绍。那在今天我们第一位的讲者就是 Rahasya， 就是我多年的良师益友。这几年的时间呢，大家都在自己的国家，所以今天有这个机会，他现在人在澳洲，所以接下来我想这样子好，我先也请 Marcus 跟大家先打个招呼好吗 ？Marcus， 然后 Rahasya， 可以吗？ Yes, Rahasya. Hi, Marcus.
Hello, everyone. Nice
Hi.
to be here with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Darshana, Marcus, and everyone who's joining this call. It's a privilege and a surprise in a way. And I have to apologize about my looks. I went surfing this morning, and I had a little accident. My surfboard kind of hit me right in the face. And so I had a few stitches at the hospital. And we're
This morning?
Yes, a few hours ago.
Wow, okay.
So I don't look so fit, but I'm happy to see you, and I'm happy to share with you. Life is just an adventure, no?
Yes. OK， 谢谢 Rahasya， 然后我们也先请 Marcus 先休息，待会呢我们还会有机会会再跟 Marcus 有更多的交流的时间。Thank you, Marcus. I'll see you later. Thank you. OK， 好，那好，接下来的时间呢，我们就交给 Rahasya， 那来听听他从理性到灵性的这一路的改变。但是我刚刚听到说他今天早上才去缝了几针哦，所以嘴巴那个对，他就像他讲的，人生就是如此。OK， 好，那接下来的时间就交给 Rahasya。Please, Rahasya. Thank you.
Okay. Well, it's lovely to be with you. And, since COVID, I did a lot of online work. And what I find incredibly beautiful is that when we move beyond the mind into presence, and that we can all do together, then there is no distance. And then we are actually entering a field that is nourishing for all of us. So I was wondering, I asked Darshana, well, what is this meeting about? And she just invited me to share my own story a little bit, which is basically I call it a story from becoming to being. And of course, we are already. So from the beginning, I had a very adventurous life because I was born in Switzerland, and it was just after the Second World War. And my parents thought there's going to be another war, so they emigrated to the Canary Islands. And then when I was 2 years old, we came back, and my father had a sailboat in construction in Eastern Germany. And some friends brought it back to the West. And that was, since my father lost pretty much all his money during the war, that was the only place we would live in, which means I lived the first 8 years of my life on a boat. We didn't have a house, and we were sailing, and it was not always pleasant, but it was adventurous. It was great to meet many different cultures in the different ports, and sailors are raised by themselves. And so then eventually, I think when I was 8, we landed with the boat in Antibes in southern France. And my parents decided to put my brother and me into a French school without knowing any French. Very challenging. And after a while, I managed. And then came the high school, and I went into a boarding school in Germany, which also was very much into sports. So we had a sailing and skiing group that practiced regularly. And since in the winter, my father had built a chalet in Switzerland on 2,000 meters. So in the summer, we were on the boat. In the winter, we were in the mountains with no electricity and really very far away from every civilization. So imagine growing up on the ocean and in the mountains. And that actually, even though it was very challenging, because I experienced a lot of difficulties also by being seasick and being caught in avalanches, and so accidents do happen, as you can see in my lips. But this upbringing somehow always pointed me towards the deep wish for freedom. And my father was a very freedom-loving man, so I learned about outer freedom. And I had the illusion or the thought or the conditioning that outer freedom happens when you become successful in the world. So, and as a child already, I felt that love, I couldn't understand why people wouldn't love each other. Love was the most important thing in my life. So the search for freedom and the search for love. So in school, the search for love was, of course, for many of us, I'm sure you can say that too, the competition and the wanting to be the best, because when you are the best, you get a lot of attention. So I was a very good student, and I was very good in skiing and sailing, and I could help other boys and girls to learn that. And then I wanted to study something that can be of benefit for many. So I became a doctor, and I was a doctor for about 8 years. But that profession somehow felt like an imprisonment, because there are so many ideas and rules and practicalities in medicine that didn't fit in my vaster vision. I felt medicine is a very unexact science. So I did a doctorate in science and microbiology, and thought if I do the the professional path, I will be satisfied. I will find the freedom that I'm looking for. Ultimately, I realized that the way medicine is practiced is not really so. It's helpful in many ways, but it doesn't address the cause of sicknesses. So I felt the body is the last thing that gets sick. Before that, the psyche, the energy field, the energetic reality of people, the living habits make us sick. So then from being a doctor, I studied a lot of alternative medical and psychological wisdom. So I more and more became a therapist and tried many modalities around therapy. When I was in 1980, I felt a very strong pull to go on a journey to India. And first the journey was to climb mountains, because I just love mountains, and we did a lot of trekking in the Himalayas, which brought me to many experiences of meditation, even though I didn't know that I was meditating. So that India trip brought me to an incredible master in Pune, and I felt I'm coming to a place where my longing gets answered. And I studied many different therapeutic techniques, going from hypnosis to encounter to breath therapy, to esoteric sciences, to body work. I mean, many modalities. And when I was studying them, I had these incredible, beautiful opening experiences, and always believed, okay, if I can really fully understand that modality, then I will be free. Then the idea of spiritual freedom came, because my master was speaking morning and evening for 2.5 hours, things that I never heard anybody else say. And they resonated so much in my heart. So I ended up being 10 years, or actually living in India for more than 10 years, in the winter time of Europe, and in the summertime of Europe, I was traveling, giving workshops in all the modalities, more and more that I had learned. So I was talking about freedom, but I didn't feel free. And I think many of you know this one. So the first part of my life was a lot about becoming and finding a personal identity through my skills and through my intellect and through my left brain, through logic. And the master I was with was teaching mainly meditation. And he had developed many different modalities of meditation that I practiced for many years. And in these modalities, different meditation techniques brought me incredible opening experiences. But I was still, I would say, a seeker. My attention was still into something better later. And if you look, the audience probably can feel with that. If you look into your life, how many times are you actually present here without looking for something better? How many minutes a day are you totally present, where there is no thought about past, no thought about future, where you are just here? I would say this is very few of us. And this here and now, I'm sure your mind has heard that many times. the here and now then became a goal. Okay, I need to be here and now. Later, if I meditate enough, if I work enough on myself, if I do the latest program that has been developed by some intelligent people to penetrate the content of consciousness. And in 1999, finally, unprepared, something shifted in me where I realized, my God, I'm chasing my own tail. Whatever I'm looking for is actually already the case, but I never found it. I thought the meditation, the depths of presence in the meditation that I experienced are the goal. But what I was actually looking for was what everybody's looking for. It is love, it is peace, it is fulfillment, it is connection, it is feeling part of this incredible universe. Now that opening in 1999, I call it was a gesture of grace. I cannot say that any technique that I practiced to the max would have taken me there. And it was more like a stopping. I said, my God, everything that I do to become a better person is actually taking me away from who I am ultimately. So that, since with all the techniques I learned before and all the deep meditations I experienced before and all the Indian wisdom that was kind of pouring out from my master, my whole work changed. So my whole focus now is not so much about finding how the universe works. It is more like the awe and gratitude and love for that which is. And that, of course, includes me. That includes this body-mind. When I talk about me as a separate person, as a personality. But my attention is on that which is aware of the personality. And this is something that I keep teaching. I think I've been working in Taiwan for many years before the COVID situation. And all the teachings that I was sharing in Taiwan and in China and around the world, run many different courses, helping friends to move through their own mind pattern into that which is beyond mind. In China, they call it the Tao. It's a formless reality that has no object. Everything that we experience, we could say, are objects that are happening in that which is aware of the object. It's very simple. It's like, instead of focusing on the content of nature, which is very interesting. I mean, I'm looking outside and nature is so abundant, and my mind gets then focused on the object, trees and flowers and sky, and we forget that we are actually a tiny little ball floating in infinity. And the discovery that that which is aware in me is not personal, it's not part of my person, it is universal. It has many names. In China or Taiwan, it's called the Tao, or it's called God, or it's called consciousness or presence. They are all words that don't point towards an object. Love doesn't point towards an object. Love is a space. Peace doesn't point towards an object. Peace is a space. Silence doesn't point to an object. It is a space. And there words become really, really difficult, because the moment we name something, we make a thing out of nothing. And that's why many of us fail, for example, in love, because we think we can get love. And many of us try that. And unless we discover that who we are is love, we will be on the road of becoming, and we will become very intelligent, and we can develop incredible technology. But if it is not sourced in the infinite consciousness that we are, it creates the crazy world we have created, with Putin creating wars, and there's hunger, and there's COVID-19 and many other sicknesses. And it looks like the world goes more and more crazy, even though there is so much intelligence in creation. So I haven't not met beautiful Marcus, who will speak to you later from the scientific point of view, as I understand it. And I'm really, looking forward to hear what Marcus has to say about this, because it's almost like I've tried the intellectual way, and it brought me very far in the world. But the freedom is beyond intellect. The freedom is beyond mind. The freedom is deeper than any object that I can label. So the discovery of the true identity is an amazing, ever unfolding journey that doesn't stop. I feel every day somehow there is more presence in the world. And the interesting thing is, the less I look for something better, the more I see the perfection of everything. Not always. I always have an ego and a personality structure with certain habits. But when my attention, and this is an invitation for everyone who is listening, when my attention is beyond the identification. For example, when I was a doctor, I was very identified with being a good doctor, and I was a good doctor. I had many fantastic clients that were ready to experiment with new methods. I did acupuncture, which was not recognized in Germany at the time. I did hypnosis, I did Feldenkrais, many different things to help. So the becoming identity, as long as we are in the body, is very helpful to manage our life in the world. And yet, when we lose the connection to the infinite, when we lose the connection to source, we are bound in the wheel of looking for a better and better identity, and we miss what is already here. It can only flower when we give that attention, because wherever attention goes is where our energy flows. Now, I realize time is quite running, and I don't know how the program is going, but if you want, we can open for a little bit to questions. I could talk pretty much more, but I think I want to make it more direct for you. If you have any question that comes up while I'm talking, you're very welcome. It doesn't mean I have all the answers, but please feel free.
OK，Rahasya，待会儿呢，我们会有时间，会有 Rahasya，跟我们对话的时间。
Yeah, I'm here.
OK，那
Okay.
OK， yeah。So,
So what does that mean? Shall I continue my talk?
oh, you still have 10 minutes. 你还
Oh,
有10分
good.
钟的时间 ，Yeah。
Okay. Okay, then I would like to go with you in a meditation that is one of my favorites, and I haven't understood it when I started practicing it, but it became more and more a reality. And so that meditation is very helpful to alleviate suffering in the world, and of course to alleviate your own suffering. I call it the Atisha heart transformation meditation. Atisha was an old Tibetan master, and he discovered, like many others, his deepest innermost being as the heart of everything, as the loving heart that is all there is. And he shared this discovery that if we are in suffering, and please make that a reality for you, we all have certain elements of suffering. Normally, our personality wants to get rid of suffering and wants the goodies. And everybody tries this, and this is why there's so much war in the world, because so much friction, so much antagonism, so much love-hate among couples, because they want to change what is. And this meditation, I just give you a short overview. The meditation is a guidance into what we call the spiritual heart, the energy field that emanates from the heart, and it is much, much bigger than this little person. When we move deep into the heart, and we make a little attempt to guide you there, behind all the layers of personality, we will find what the mind would label nothing. And this, the ego doesn't like that, to feel that I am nothing. But Atisha discovered, well, if I am nothing, I can absorb everything that disturbs me, and I can absorb everything that elevates me. And the amazing thing is, when you absorb in the heart any painful situation, painful feeling, anger, resentfulness, hate, all these things that we want to get rid of, rather than getting rid of them, we absorb them and let them flow through the heart into the great nothing. It's not just an idea, it actually happens. And there the suffering simply dissolves. It's like a cloud that has been hiding the sky. And when the cloud opens, the sky has always been there, and the cloud disappears. So then that disappearance opens the sky, and the sky is what blesses us every day in our life and nourishes everything. So the out-breath then can carry the blessings of our innermost being. We could say the blessings of love, of care, of grace, of oneness, and share it with all beings. First, share it with our own, where our suffering has been lodged, and then we can extend it to friends and family, and then we can extend it to all beings. So let's try this together. If you could sit comfortably with your spine upright, and you can close your eyes and just taking a few deep conscious breaths. Feel that in the in-breaths, something is expanding. In the out-breath, we're falling inward. So in-breath, opening, out-breath, falling inward. And if you like, you can adopt the idea that each time we let go in the out-breath, we are melting through different layers of our personality that we have identified with. So mostly it's our thoughts. So in the out-breath, melt deeper than thoughts. In the next out-breath, melt deeper than feelings. Deeper than body sensations. Deeper than the breath. Deeper than the heartbeat. Now feel or bring your attention to your heart and get a sense that the heart is beating, but there is something, there's a space in which the heart beats. Now enter that space. That is deeper than all experiences. The mind cannot much relate to this. This is more like a deep nothingness. It's almost like, if you like, it's like becoming the sky. And there's nothing anymore to identify with. I am still here, but as what? And the first recognition of this inner spaciousness of that empty heart can be used for a deep, deep healing of the body-mind. So any suffering story that you carry with yourself right now in this moment, any pain, any body situation, any story of your family, anything that creates psychological pain in you, you can invite, riding on the in-breath, flow into the heart, into that empty space, and flow through the heart into the infinite sky. And there, without any personal effort, it dissolves. And what is left is space, peace, love, but all formless yet. So the out-breath and imagination helps here. The out-breath then can carry the blessings of peace from the infinite back into a certain specific form that is familiar to us. So blessing all these places in your body that were occupied by suffering. Now let's try that one more time. In the in-breath, inviting any psychological pain, any hurt, any unwellness, letting it flow through the heart and dissolve in the inner emptiness. And then the out-breath, a breath of blessings, a breath of love, a breath of peace back into your body-mind. Let's say perhaps you're carrying a heartache because of some separation or some betrayal. Now in the in-breath, invite the heartache, invite the betrayal, invite the hurt without resisting anything. Let yourself be like an open channel and let all that negativity flow through you without resisting it. And you will find it naturally dissolves. And the out breath can breathe out blessings, blessings to you, blessings to these patterns that we may have carried for so long. And bringing the quality of peace and love and presence into those areas that were occupied by suffering. Now, if you want to practice this meditation a little longer, the next step would be that we can invite riding on the in-breath, the suffering of our family, of our people that are close to us, because deep down we are already one. We feel whatever else is feeling. So instead of rejecting it, when we dare to absorb the suffering of our partner, the sadness of our children, the hurt, the trauma of our woman, and we can invite it flowing into the heart. Needs a little courage, needs a little practice. We will find it has no substance. It dissolves, just like morning mist dissolves on a sunny day and a sunny morning. And then the out breath can carry the light of presence and healing and love and peace back to the friends and family. And whether they are aware it or not, if this meditation is practiced more often, the people that are near you will feel that. They will feel lighter, they feel relieved, they will feel that something has changed in my attitude, because we are sharing a field that is deeply, deeply connected, not connected as separate experiences, but connected as that which is aware of all experience. That's why many masters in the West, in the East, when they were asked, "Who are you?" the answer was, "I am that." So that is not a thing. So let's take a few more deep breaths, allowing any suffering from ourselves or from our friends and family to be absorbed in the heart. Any sensory experience of shrinking, of resistance, of hardness, of violence, absorb it in the heart. It's okay. The heart is big enough. And the out breath carrying the blessings of peace, of silence, of presence, of love, of care to ourselves and to the friends and family. And eventually you can extend the heart to all beings, but maybe it's a little bit much for today, so we just stay with that. And I would like to invite you just sit for a few minutes and just allow whatever happens to you. Just allow that which is aware, the watcher, that field that can never be described, watching all events. In peace. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om Shanti is a beautiful Hindi expression pointing towards the peace that is always here. And perhaps many of you can feel that in this moment. When we come out from that depths, you can take a deep breath and maybe stretch your body a little bit. Opening to a new and fresh moment here.
Rahasya,
Yes.
I think we should continue.
Oh, good. We still have time.
Okay, yeah, okay. No, I think 在这个阶段里面，我们刚才体会了这个 Rahasya 带给我们大家的静心的经验。然后这个等一下，我必须要那在我就是像这样的静心，我已经有大概30多年的经验了。你可以想象，当然刚才是 Rahasya 的带领，那我已经也在生活上就是养成习惯，很多时候就是坐着。那包括我相信有很多在场的咨商师，那时候在跟 Rahasya 在一块的时候，我也是受咨商师的训练，因为 Rahasya 用他的以前医生的经验，然后以及他自己所学的经验，然后带领了一票的这个咨商师们。那我记得其中有一个很重要的就是聆听当我们自己安静下来的时候，那这后来在我的亲密关系里面或跟人的关系里面，包括在跟个案这个对话里面都有很大的帮助，就是倾听，然后所有对方的这些生命的经验对我来说它就是生命经验，非常宝贵的生命经验，然后吸进来吐出去，然后如何在这个和谐当中我们彼此的同理也好，共振也好，往往就在那个很安静的支持之下，我们双方都会有很大的帮助。所以我记得很多在学咨商师的时候都会说，当你给太多的时候怎么样？老师，当你这样子的话会不会给太多？对我来讲从来没有给太多，因为我一直都在跟彼此互相的这个支持里面，我只有成长、学习跟吸收，并没有所谓的给掉太多所以这一点我要真的很谢谢 Rahasya 的在这方面的教导。所以跟与人对话、与人交流这件事情，从来都不是对我来讲不会是个负担跟压力，因为每一个生命我只看到它的精彩。所以谢谢 Rahasya。那接下来呢，我们就要请 Rahasya 休息一下。我们有好多位有提问的，我们会一起一并在后面来做那待会我也会跟 Rahasya 分享您的问题。那接下来的时间我们就会邀请 Marcus 那 Marcus 他的背景因为就有这个书上有一本他的书，有朋友对他的介绍，我想我就很简单的从这个书上里面揭露一些跟各位分享，就是他先是一位钢琴的神童，然后后来到中学的时候就转换成这个对弈西洋的盲棋，他不只是下西洋棋，而且是下盲棋在他的经验里面，他特别提到那个下盲棋的过程当中，是一个人跟好几20个人1-20个人下棋，而且是把这个眼睛蒙起来这一定是个天才所以很难不只是聪明人而已，还有其他的训练，然后那个其他的训练我就觉得太有意思了。然后之后他又再从学习物理跟哲学去了解宇宙真理的，在大学的时代他就是 对于这方面的投入。那毕业之后，他就前往印度出家了12年，然后又回到德国，重新投入理论物理，还有印度风水，最后转向投入用量子元件测量人体讯息与能量参数。这到底是什么？我想前面那里听得懂，到后面那里就越来越科学化了。但是今天很开心能够让 Marcus 来跟我们谈一谈他的世界，因为基本上对于他的思维模式，然后为什么在印度的这个12年，这12年那份安静，那份自我探索对他造成了什么样的影响，这个是我很好奇的地方哦。所以那接下来我们就请 Marcus 来跟我们大家来谈一谈他的理性与灵性。 Marcus.
Okay, great. Listening to Rahasya, I was reflecting a little on my own life. As he mentioned, the first part of his life was becoming, and the second then is being. And this reminded me of this concept of the two halves of life, which Carl Gustav Jung developed. And I have experienced it in my own life, that the first part, I tried to become something good in so many different areas. As you mentioned, when I was like 6, 7 years old, I started to play the piano, and I had a very ambitious piano teacher who then got me from concert to concert, which was just a little too much for my young psyche. So I stopped doing this, but also for another reason, because I started to play chess around the same time. And at one point I needed to decide, what do I really want to become good at? Because to be really good at both seemed to be too much of an endeavor for me. A lot of training you need for playing the piano. You also need a lot of training for playing chess. So I decided for chess, and this accompanied me for quite some time, playing international tournaments, and then you have the chance to get the international master title. So I was after this, but this was just one part of the story. The other side of myself developed in a different way. I also, when I was maybe 12, 13 years ago old, or 14, I developed a strong desire for discovering what is the truth. And I knew playing chess is a skill, playing piano is a skill, and they lead you into certain experiences also. Also in playing piano and playing chess, you can have those experiences, but like kind of peak experiences. And I had this kind of experiences also while playing chess and while playing piano. But there was a strong desire emerging in me to find out what is the truth. And my first intuition, which naturally came when I was around 14 years old, was that if there is some truth to be found, then I have to look into science, because this seemed to be, if you look at the historical development of humanity, an actual expression of the search for truth. And yes, in the tradition of the European Enlightenment, I saw that the intellect is the topmost agent in the human being. And so I developed a very strong desire, passion, I would say, for science. And already at school, I started to study things which normally you study at universities. And I had teachers who supplied me books. At the time, there was no internet to Google and to figure out everything. And yeah, so I in an early age, I developed this very strong passion for science, and it actually, believe me, it never left me. I still have it, and I still consider science to be a wonderful institution which humanity has developed, also for unifying, because science is the same in Moscow or Tehran or Taipei or Washington or Berlin, you can mention any place. There are 10,000 of universities around, and science is one language. Everyone publishes in English, and there are certain ethics of science, and if you follow them, you come to truth. I believe that science is dedicated, one of the rare institutions in humanity all over the globe, which is dedicated to the welfare of everyone. I know this is a very idealistic view of science, and we have a lot of influences from politics and science. We have a lot of commercial influences in science, companies funding research. We have a lot of even religious impact on science, but this is all external influences. I believe that science still has the power to overcome all this, call it contaminations, call it superficial influences, but ultimately those truths which science discovered, they will persist and they will prevail, and whatever is superimposed from commercial side, from political side, from religious side, will be overcome. So this was a very strong plaidoyer for science, and I have this passion very, very much still. But this is only one side of the story. The other side of the story is, I think something happened when I was around, I can't figure it out exactly when it was. It was around 16 years old, or maybe around 16 in the time of little late puberty. And I believe everyone, if he looks back into his life in a young age, has a certain type of experience which opens up, which the veil which covers the young spirit and gives him a glimpse of what actually he can visualize in his life later, which gives you a glimpse of the purpose of your life, which you can realize, which only your life separates you from, and still doesn't separate you from, because it's there from the very beginning. And some people call this the Grail's experience. And this experience became a guideline in my life. And I realized it much later, in the moment when I had this experience. It was something special, but I couldn't really relate it to the larger context. And this was, as I played the piano, I chose music as one of my 4 main topics in high school. And one of the first tasks I got from the teacher was to write an essay on opera and have a lecture on opera to the people. And as any other young people in the age of 16, opera was not really my music. I never listened to opera, and I wouldn't do it voluntarily. But a good friend, I don't remember who it was, he gave me a tape, and this was a 90-minute tape, a collection of different pieces of opera. And I remember the first song was sung by Caruso. It was a recording from the end of the 19th century, and the quality wasn't very good, but I listened through it. And when I first time listened through it, there came a piece of music. And when it just started, I felt, wow, this is celestial. This is, I didn't really have words for it. And I listened through this piece, and it's stuck in my mind until now. And it opened up a vision to something which became a guideline in my life very soon. This actually was the overture of Lohengrin, which is an opera from Richard Wagner. At that time, I didn't know who was writing it, what it was. There was no labels, there was no description on the tape. I just listened to this music, and it opened up the vision. And this vision, how to describe it? It's something like, I am this consciousness, and I am not this body. And it wasn't an intellectual realization like I'm placing it now, that I am this consciousness and I'm not the body, but it was just a shift of perspective, which made me look from inside out, realizing this consciousness is actually my very first reality. And everything which appears within this consciousness is my secondary reality. Like the body appears in my consciousness, it's a secondary reality. All the belongings, everything external is only real because it is real in my consciousness. It is reflected on the screen of my consciousness. So it is secondary reality. First reality is I am this conscious being. And this was a shift. And this shift of consciousness gave me a completely different perspective on everything what I did. And I still was in school, and I finished school. And this realization didn't really stop my passion from science, but now there were these two passions were there. From this I am this consciousness, a different perspective of my life emerged, and on the other side there was a scientific. I had an early end of my high school, as I didn't have to go through all the grades at my school. So then I had to. I make the story very short because many things happened in between, of course. But I started and I had the choice what to study, and still this passion was there. If there is truth to be found in this external reality, then through science. And if I study science, it has to be physics, which is the most fundamental science. And of course, I have already studied a little quantum physics at my school time. I knew that in physics, I might find also the connection to the other passion, which is the spiritual search, which is the spiritual awareness, which was given to me not in a full extent. It wasn't a full realization, like, wow, now I am enlightened. No, it was a glimpse of something which I can go for in my life. It's something which is in the beginning given as a seed, as a vision, and then later I can come back to it after going through all the experiences which my life has to offer to me. And it was a little later that I discovered that this is a very archetypal thing happening in the life of many, many people. And I realized it when I looked at the myth of Parzival. Parzival was one of the knights of the Round Table of King Arthur, who was residing in Camelot. You know the story with Excalibur. It was one of my favorite childhood myths. Like, I don't want to tell the story a lot, but Parzival, as a knight of the Round Table, he was sent by the king to find the Holy Grail. And the Holy Grail is a symbol for this lost oneness, for the missing spiritual unity, which makes sense of everything else, which is nourishing the soul. The Grail is a symbol of the service to God, of the connection to God, of the relationship to God. The Grail is also a symbol for the female, for a society which was very strongly rooted in a male archetype, in a very patriarchalic, hierarchical structure of religion and male spirituality. So the Grail is a symbol of everything which is missing in one's life to make it a whole spiritual experience. And Parzival, in the same way, when he was very young, maybe 16, he had the first encounter with the Grail. I don't want to tell the story here. You might refer to, just Google Parzival and read the story. Parzival, when he was 16, he had the first encounter with the Grail, and he saw it, and he saw the beauty of the Grail, and he saw how strong spiritual power emanated from it, but he couldn't make any sense of it, and he was basically then rejected out of the Grail's castle, and he had to go through a life of a knight, which is an adventurous life, which is going through so many experiences, chasing for this and chasing for that, fighting for this, fighting for that, until he finally could get back to the same place, to the same space, and re-experiences this wonderful transformation. And this whole story is beautifully described in this opera Parzival, which was the last opera which Richard Wagner wrote. And I discovered that this is a myth of my life. A similar story is told in the Vedas, which is the ancient Sanskrit scriptures of India. There is a very important book which I studied a lot called the Srimad Bhagavatam. And there the story of Narada Muni is described. He was also a young person whose spirituality got ignited by associating with highly advanced spiritual people. And this made him, gave him a short darshan, a short vision of God and of his own relationship to God, and this extreme emotion of love of God. And still it was, again, he lost this vision, and he knew that he had to go through his life. So I think every one of us, those of you who didn't realize this, but have a look at this early age, maybe you also had this kind of an experiences, which gave you a glimpse of what the purpose of your life is. It could have been falling in love. It could have been an experience of nature. It could have been, like in my case, a piece of music or a piece of art which inspired you in such a way. So I just tell you this story because there's these two flames burning in my heart so strongly, or one you can say in the head, which is the passion for science, and one is the heart, which is the spiritual path. And so I started to study physics, and I was really inspired, so many new things to discover. But actually, while studying physics, the more I learned, the more I knew, the more questions came, and the stronger the spiritual quest became, and the stronger this realization became that life is really very short. And if I specialize, and in science you have to really specialize, you have to really choose a discipline, and within this discipline you have to choose a certain small fraction of this discipline and specialize it and become really good in it, and it's very difficult to keep the whole picture. And I knew if I undergo this way, I will be I lose myself in it's so easy to lose yourself, and it's so difficult to get it back to the broader picture. And so this desire for the spiritual realization became stronger and stronger. And if you're in this age, like with 20 or 21, you're so idealistic. Remember when you were like 20 or 21, the idealism and the search for truth is so strong. So I decided, okay, I have to drop all of this now, and I have to become a full-time spiritual practitioner. Fortunately, that time when I studied in Heidelberg University, which is a very beautiful, romantic town at a little river, and at the river there is a path going up the mountain called the Philosopher's Way, and at the Philosopher's Way there's an institute, the Physical Institute of Theoretical Physics is there, Experimental Physics is also there. So the physics department is at the Philosopher's Path. So that's something which made me also inspire philosophy as a secondary topic next to physics. But it was in Heidelberg, actually. I remember that time I had this another desire came in my heart, is to find a spiritual teacher, because somehow I knew if I want to follow the spiritual path, I need to follow a person who is actually following the spiritual path and who has undergone also many of these experiences. Like Parsival, he had a spiritual mentor. It was Merlin. You have heard about Merlin definitely a lot, who was also the spiritual mentor of King Arthur. So it was my great luck that time when I was 21 that I met my spiritual teacher in my university town. And when I met him, I knew, okay, that's my chance now. That's my chance now to get out of material life, which looked so predetermined, to go all through these different stages, make my doctorate, take a job at the university, make a career there. And I said, no, that's not my cup of tea, definitely not. I have understood that this human life is just meant for spiritual realization, and that's all, nothing else. And I will just now sit as a monk for 2-3 years and get enlightened. This was the young enthusiasm. So I followed my spiritual master, and I got my initiation as a monk into a spiritual path. I got a spiritual name, and I completely changed my identity, but something remained. And this, because it was so strong, my passion for science was so strong. So at my initiation, my spiritual teacher gave me a present. Actually, he gave me 2 presents, but I will only talk about the one present. It was 2 books. One was a purely spiritual book. He said, this is for your spiritual aspiration, for your spiritual identity. And here is another book. It was a big book called The Synthesis of Science and Religion. He said, this is what you are supposed to do on this planet in this lifetime, because you follow your spiritual aspirations, you follow your spiritual desires, and you go your spiritual path. This is what you do for yourself, but you just don't only do it for yourself, but you do it also for the world. So what can you give back to the world? This is in the other book, The Synthesis of Science and Religion. And this is something which followed me through all my spiritual life. And it was already mentioned, I stayed to be a monk for 12 years, and to be a monk means there is nothing else than spiritual life. There is your spiritual sadhana, there is your meditation, there is your spiritual practice, and then there is your services, your service for God, your service for the others. So this is what was filling my life for 12 years. And in this time, but I more and more grew into the realization that I want to connect these 2 passions of my life, science and spirituality. So this connecting science and spirituality became the red thread in my life, which I'm following still until today. I thought when I'm in the middle of my life, coming back to this concept of the 2 parts of life, I will retire and I will just go for pure spiritual practice. But life turned out in a different way. And what I'm doing nowadays anyway, I have to maybe continue the story a little. When I was, after 12 years being a monk, I came to the realization that I need to get back to the world, that I need to more strongly reconnect to the world. And I started to visit scientific conferences, and I started to develop a project. I started a small ashram where other monks were living. We were living together there, and we started an academy. This academy is called the Vedic Academy. It exists until today, and it was called the Vedic Academy for the Integration of Science and Spirituality. And I believe that this integration of science and spirituality is very important. It might not be important for your personal spiritual growth, but for many people it is, because nowadays science is such a strong fundament of culture and civilization. If political decisions on what regarding life, regarding ethics, ethical questions are given, they don't ask the spiritual authorities, but the scientific authorities are. So everything is seen from the perspective of science, and science, mainstream science nowadays still is stuck in the paradigm of the 19th century. The physics of the 19th century, the Newtonian physics, is still the basis of the scientific understanding in the mainstream, and the discoveries of quantum theory about the interconnectedness of everything, about the deep spiritual roots of the material existence, about the supremacy of consciousness over matter. All these realizations, which I had while studying physics, by studying quantum physics, which the fathers of quantum physics had, like Niels Bohr, like Werner Heisenberg, they understood the deep mystery of life through physics, through science. And I believe if you go deep within science, you can come to the ground of a spiritual truth. I think it's a saying of Werner Heisenberg, who said, if you take a sip of the glass of science, you become an atheist. But if you drink it fully, on the ground you find God. And I for myself, I turned this saying around. I said, I like to say, if you take a sip of the glass of religion, you become an atheist. But if you drink it all, you find God at the bottom. Because many people who start to follow a spiritual path, they join a spiritual organization and they become a party member, like having their own guru, having their own belief, having their own truths, following their own path, and defending against others, and so on. So the same is everywhere. If you do something superficially, you lose everything. But if you go deep, doesn't matter what you are doing. If you go deep, if you go to the ground, you find the common spiritual unity behind everything. So this is, I believe, you can find in science, you can find in spirituality. So my personal path is in the second path of my life. The first path is becoming. I first learned chess and piano. Then I studied physics and I studied philosophy, and I studied then the spiritual scriptures of India. I studied the Vedas. I studied Vedic architecture. I became a Vedic astrologer. I had to go through to so many different aspects of knowledge. Just a second. So my first part of life was very, very full. So I saw the second part of my life will be, as Rahasya pointed it out, come to being. But for me, it means I have to fulfill my spiritual mission, which is the integration of science and spirituality. And for me, it crystallized in some discovery, which I had made in the end of the 90s, in the beginning of the 2001, because I met an amazing person. I met many amazing people in my life, but one of them was a German physicist. His name is Burkhard Heim, and I always like to talk about him. I met him first time 1998, and he still lived for another 3 years. He was a student of Werner Heisenberg, and he discovered a 12th dimensional unified quantum field theory. I will definitely not talk about this in detail now, but he gave me a glimpse into what I call nowadays the information field, that material reality, four-dimensional reality, is embedded in a hyperspace. And this hyperspace has two additional dimensions. It's the fifth and the sixth dimension. And this is an information field attached to everything which happens in the material world. Actually, everything which happens in the material world happens because of the pre-design in the information field, the blueprint in the information field. And the information field, the fifth and the sixth dimension, is an expression of consciousness. Consciousness, the symptom of the self, throws a shadow of the self on the material energy. And this shadow of the self, on the material energy, in the light of consciousness. This is what I like to call the information field. You can call it the bioenergetic field if you like, relate it to the organism, but the information field is also the unity of body, mind, and soul. So I learned this from Burkhard Heim, and in the end of his life, he was a great person. This would be a whole talk on itself on Burkhard Heim, but I promised him that I will only use this knowledge for the welfare of humanity. And so I saw it as my my task to develop a device, technical device, which through quantum processes can get in contact with the information field, like call it an interface into the information field, in order to be able to read it, in order to connect to these higher dimensions of reality, and in this way connect to the level of consciousness, which is the highest level of integration in reality, and ultimately to the self, to the spiritual reality beyond. And this technology, it took me a few years to really develop it. And I think it was 2006 when I had the first working prototype, and it was 2007 when I started. I had to suddenly become an entrepreneur, because I had this development in my hands, and I wanted to share it to the people, but it had to be reproduced. It was costly to produce and develop it, and I suddenly had to deal with money. You know, I wasn't used so much to deal with money as a monk. I didn't pursue a career or anything. So, but, you know, you have to do those things in life which come to you. Like Parsival, he had the spiritual realization in the beginning of his life, but then he had to go through everything what a knight has to go through. So this is what life is offering to us. This is what the self is the container of all the experiences which are awaiting you in your life, and you can go through it, and you can do all the things as a service in connection to God, as a service to God, as a service to humanity. And if you do this, whatever you do will not entangle you into the material world, but it will actually give you spiritual realization. So this is what I'm doing nowadays. I'm already in the middle of the second half of my life, and I'm very, very busy to bring this to the people. I very much like to teach these things about the information field, about the bioenergetic field. I have a strong passion to speak about the connection of science and spirituality, to bring scientific-minded people to spirituality, to give spiritual-minded people a rational ground for their spiritual practice. So I see myself as a bridge builder. I'm not a purely spiritual person. I'm not a pure scientist. I'm always in the in-between. I'm somehow always building the bridges, and that's not very comfortable. So actually, I don't find a comfort zone in this, but it is, I find it a big blessing. And yes, I have no idea about the time. I got a little enthusiastic about the topic. So I might ask, tell me, what's time-wise the situation?
事实上时间应该可以开放给大家问问题了。
Okay, great. So thank you so much. And yes, I'm looking forward for the questions. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, 我意犹未尽啊，就是刚才听 Marcus 在，等一下，我必须要把这个弄到 Yes, OK， 好，因为谢谢大家啊，因为我们今天有翻译，然后所以我呢要用中文的方式，我待在中文的方式，然后另外我们有2位翻译，非常谢谢他们啊。那刚才听到2位在谈到他们自己的生命故事的时候，我现在也要请 Rahasya 可以出现，可以开镜头，让我们也可以看到 Rahasya， 因为接下来的时间就会是回应我们今天的好多位的提问啊。2位来自不同的生命经验， 两位来自于一个我们社会对我们的期待。那两位都是在21岁的时候就到印度去，然后想必内在一定是有一个很大的召唤。那在我们朋友的提问当中其中有一个是我经常听到的，他们都会说老师，这个我们有柴米油盐酱醋茶这翻译就要辛苦你了就是我们在金钱上我们好像似乎都要先考量。我现在来看一个，灵性是当我们经济独立，完全不用顾虑柴米油盐酱醋茶的问题，才能够全然去探索的道路吗？好，换句话说，有一些朋友就会讲，就是说，因为我没那个钱，所以我没有办法去追求灵性的成长。那我想当我们很理性来看这件事情的时候，我们知道那个答案一定是否定的，觉得不是。但是如果你真的是处在那样的状况，每天必须要为生活打拼的时候，可以想象他这个问题的这个根本其实是有很多的恐惧跟害怕的。那针对这个，我想我们请两位从你们的角度来看，我们就延续刚才，我们先请 Marcus 好了， Marcus 帮我们回答像这样子的问题，然后待会儿也请 Rahasya 也能够帮忙我们因为这个是普遍很多人有的想法，那当然有资源的人就比较自由，能够去从各个角度去学习。请。
Yes, I believe the spiritual part cannot be separated from life at all. There is no spiritual life and material life, but actually we live one life. And in our life, we will go through all those experiences which belong to us, which make us a whole human being. So if someone encounters financial problems or insecurities, existential fears, and so on, these are all stepstones on his spiritual life also. These are the real things she or he has to go through for spiritual realization. And being confronted with this kind of difficulties, of course, gives us a great chance to overcome the fear, to overcome the existential insecurity. So it's easy said, that we shall embrace all these challenges of life, and by embracing them, by accepting them, by going through them in full consciousness and mindfulness, our spiritual heart will also be growing.
Rahasya?
Yeah. It's funny, I always get these questions, and the question is always that division, that I have a practical life and a spiritual life. And if I take my life as an example, I find it's a total miracle, because my parents, my father lost pretty much all his money in the war, after the war, because he had business in East Germany that was all gone. So there was always a scarcity of money. But at the same time, what I learned through life with my father is that he didn't care how little money we have. He cared about the life quality. So the mind would say, yeah, of course, you must be very rich if you can live on a boat. Well, the boat was a gift so that we could live somewhere. And until we moved to Australia, which was in 1997, I had no home, no house, no regular income, but I always lived what I wanted to live. So I managed to go traveling. I managed to I managed to make enough money to do what I want to do and earn money with it. So, for example, I wanted to continue skiing, but I didn't have money for skiing. So I became a ski teacher. I wanted to go sailing in Greece. So I organized meditation and sailing groups and chartered a sailing boat and so on. So I was kind of privileged to dare to risk pretty much many things in my life to pursue what I feel I want to live. Now that sounds very kind of selfish, but it also helped people to find the courage to go for their gifts. No? And you need to be ready to experience failure. So for me, the spiritual part, like going to India and then living with a master who never had any money in his pocket, but who loved to live very abundantly. I can say, whoever is listening, if you have a dream, if you have a vision, if you have an urge, if you have a gift, and we all have gifts, very different gifts. Some of us are like Marcus is a fantastic scientist and chess player and many other things. And if you can find what you get passionate about, then you don't shrink back from the difficulties. If I look at my life, I should have died at least 15 times with all the adventures that I was going through. But it was worth it, and funny enough, I'm still here. The body mind is still here. And if I look at my life backwards now, I'm living in the most beautiful place on the planet. I managed to create a beautiful house and a wonderful wife. She died, unfortunately, a few years ago. But if I look back, did I actually, how did I do this? I would say it all happened most of the time to surrendering where I was, to rest in where I am rather than where I want to be. And yet the intention of, the main thing, like Marcus in a different way, was my spiritual freedom, my inner freedom, my discovery of who I am. And so my invitation is for the questioner is, wherever you put your attention is where your energy flows. If your attention flows into scarcity and you have developed a belief that life is a struggle and scarce, then I would suggest it's very helpful to work on beliefs, to work on your fears, to work on your negative self-image. And one of the best way, of course, is to realize that you're not alone, to realize that the whole life loves you, otherwise you wouldn't be here. That the whole existence is ready to support you in every way if you cooperate. Now that sounds very idealistic, but it's actually true. No? I mean, I could complain, for example, I could have died this morning in the wave. It was so traumatic. So I'm kind of happy I'm still here. And suddenly there was this guy who kind of fished me out of the ocean and said, "You're bleeding." So where did he came from? Did I create that? He was a very sweet guy. He accompanied me to the car and took a little bit care of all the bleeding and said, well, now you really need to go to the hospital. So when we are, and this is why I put so much emphasis in remembering presence, when we are present to the now, Eckhart Tolle is a beautiful example in that when you're totally present, everything that we want in the future is already, how to say, here. We want the question I said, well, how do we make money? Well, are you present here? Are you allowing your attention to be just where you are? Because that, from here, you can flower. And that is very different for every one of us. And I'm not saying that everybody, needs to be living in Byron Bay in Australia, or it's not the interest of most people. But we are here to understand that life itself, the whole itself, already carries us. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. And if you look back into your experiences, even the question, you managed to live until now. I don't know how old you are now. And how did that happen? Did you all do it, or did it all happen, or half? Eventually you will see everything is wonderfully happening. And if money is supposed to come your way, it will come. And if you get challenges where you have to kind of move your bum, then you will move your bum. So that is a more general answer. There are fantastic advisors how to make money. That's not my expertise.
Yeah, 谢谢 Rahasya。我想这里面有一个我自己认为的，就是我们对于钱不够这件事情，很多人是会焦虑的啊。那我自己觉得没有钱不是一件坏事，因为我也是从以前我也是单亲妈妈的独生女儿，那所有每一毛钱就是自己去赚来的啊，所以它反而是一个动力，因为我有欲望，我没有钱，我反而是那个动力可以让我去努力去朝向那个想要去完成的梦想啊。所以但是在我听起来有很多人总是认为说我自己的钱不够，然后比较待在那个地方里面充满了恐惧，那而不是很明确的去有所行动。那以我自己的经验，就是任何一个行动都是灵性的成长，因为你只要跟人接触，那你就是一定会是一个灵性上的成长。我记得有一句话就说，你如果不爱人，你不可能爱神。那基本上要爱人就是一件需要很多学习需要很多修炼的地方。所以我想因为时间的关系我们慢慢的我们就要结束了，但是在结束之前我也想请这个，因为今天的时间很有限了，非常开心，但是结束之前我也希望 Marcus 能够带我们做一个静心，一个我们知道你这次来到台湾，你们有一个很大的会议，然后整个所有的会议的目标就是希望整个地球上的人都能够提高意识。那刚才前面 Rahasya 带了静心，也有很多人在问问题，就说为什么我一静心的时候，刚才 Rahasya 带的静心我就一直掉眼泪那份感动是怎么回事，我可不可以把手放心上。我想这一类的疑问，很细节的疑问，永远我们头脑就会冒出来，但是因为时间的关系，我也希望说那个经过了 Rahasya 刚才的静心，也希望 Marcus 能够把你这次来到台湾最主要的目的 就是也是希望我们都可以提升我们的意识。在这一点上，我想除了3位，还有所有在线上的，现在线上有500多位，甚至于未来可能看我们视频的人，我想我们都是有这样的心愿。所以最后的时间，我想交给 Marcus。
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, but I actually, I'm not, to be honest, I'm not used to guide people in guided meditations, and I don't want to do it just here now so yesterday we had a wonderful symposium here on consciousness and information medicine, and I, in the end, was actually doing such a guided meditation. So I was in this meditation singing a beautiful mantra, a beautiful song with the people, which you might know. It's Lokaha Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. May all living beings everywhere be happy and free. And maybe I will just use the opportunity to sing it. I just feel like I would like to share this mantra with you and those who are following. I see a lot of people are seeing and listening to us. You might listen to the song, or you might also sing along, because bless yourself. If you bless the world, you bless yourself. And if you bless yourself, you bless the world. And it's one of the most important spiritual realizations, that the happiness of those you perceive is your own happiness, and their suffering is your suffering. That this separation which we do in the ego state of our existence needs to be overcome by empathy, by compassion. Like the Dalai Lama always says so nicely, karuna and ahimsa. Ahimsa means non-violence, and karuna means compassion. These are the two things which we can practice for ourselves and regarding others. So I like to actually, if you like, you can close your eyes and focus a very short time on your breathing, like we have done with Rahasya. Very, very consciously slow down our breath and breathe in and breathe out, and find in this way the way of our consciousness into our heart, where we are actually connected with all human beings, and not only with the human beings, but with all beings on this planet, including the animals and the plants and nature itself. And from this place within our heart, we can feel that we are non-separated from those people close to us. If we see someone who we love, who suffers, we're suffering. And if we see they are happy, we are happy. So the suffering and the happiness of everyone is our own. And if you like, you can listen, but if you like, you can also sing with me. Lokaha samasta sukhino bhavantu. 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 loka samasta sukhino bhavantu loka samasta sukhino bhavantu loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti. May all sentient beings in this world be full of freedom and full of happiness. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, 今天很
My
开心。
favorite mantra, by the way.
OK, good. 今天很开心能够有这个机会，我们在很短的时间就促成了，大概就是2个礼拜的时间就促成了这次的大家可以聚集在一块。那也谢谢所有朋友拨空来。那我们会继续保持联系，保持连结。那只要在这条对于理性跟灵性的这条道路有兴趣的，只要是希望能够探索跟甚至于是更大的，就像刚才2位提到的那种生命的状态跟期许，就是从小我一直，我刚才记得 Marcus 讲的很重要，就是有很多事情我是为了我们就是为了我们。那这也是我多年认识 Rahasya， 这是我们一起都在努力的方向。但是虽然努力，但是不太用力，就是很自然的发生者再一次谢谢 Marcus， 欢迎你下一次再来台湾。然后我也在等待着 Rahasya， 我在等你下一次来到台湾，我们可以在一起做一些有趣的事情。那下一次如果真的有机会，我们3个可以在同一个地方出现的话 ，That's even better， 那又更好。yeah， 今天谢谢所有的朋友。
Yes, it would be wonderful.
Yeah,
Very good.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah,
很多朋友
Have a wonderful time.
Your wisdom, Darshana. Thank you, our lovely translator in the back. And thank you everyone who has joined this event.
Yeah. And Marcus, you have anything at last you want to say?
No, I'm happy.
Okay. I'm happy. Okay, that's good. 那有很多位提问的朋友，我们当然可以想而知，没有办法一一回答。但是有很多的部分，大家刚听了之后，如果沉淀一下的话，我相信其实答案我们都有，只是有很多时候我们不太相信自己的答案。那可能从书本、从别人的经验当中来呼应、回应自己心里面所渴望的。那祝福各位能够在你的道路上一样 happy， OK， happy， 最起码心里面是满足的这个我觉得满足就是能够带给我们身心健康跟平衡。所以再次 Thank you all, thank you very much, thank you. So I'll see you next time. Thank you， 各位再见了，谢谢所有的朋友，还有谢谢优善，谢谢。